Hello, I am Ruby Falconer and today's date is October 26, 2020. This is a Shamanic Egyptian Astrological update for the upcoming week. We enter this week with two of the inner planets retrograde, Mercury and Mars. Mars is retrograde in Aries, its own sign, and Mars will be turning direct on November 13th. Mercury is retrograde in Scorpio and will be entering Libra soon. And Mercury will turn direct next week on Tuesday, November 3rd, which in the United States is Election Day. Mercury will be slowing to station as we move through this week. So we've got Mars still retrograde, Mercury starting to slow to station, preparing to turn direct. Now, that energy means that it's difficult to move forward in the way that we might want to. You know, there's that feeling of constraint and restraint and some of the frustration that comes with this. It's a wonderful time to go inward. So in your own personal life, if things aren't manifesting externally, do your best to accept that and roll with it and go inward. Maybe rethink what you're doing. Rethink your attitude towards what you're doing, what it is that you want to manifest, because simply speaking, it's not time to make it happen. But that time will come. You know, this is part of the process. We periodically need to go inward to check in with our inner guidance and to get direction for where we want to go next. And that's very much true right now and in the external world. During times like these, there's a lot of frustration and a lot of irritation because a lot of people want to move forward and they're not able to. So we also have this week, we have Mercury will be retrograding back out of Scorpio and into the sign Libra. That happens on Tuesday the 27th. And we also, on the same day, on the 27th, have Venus leaving Virgo and entering Libra, coming direct. So Mercury will be entering Libra at the end of the sign, and Venus will be entering Libra at the beginning of the sign. And so what this does is this brings more of that Libran energy, more of the cardinal energy. And we've had a lot of cardinal sign energy all year long. The cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. The great shift planets, Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn. That's Horus, the young king, Osiris, the Lord of regeneration, and Sobek, the old king, have been aligned. That's the great shift alignment all year long in the sign Capricorn most of the time. Saturn went into Aquarius for a while there. But for most of the year, they've been aligned in Capricorn. And right now, they're pretty close to one another. They're within 6 degrees of each other. So that's a pretty good conjunction. And every time one of the inner planets, and when I say inner planets, in this case, I mean Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. Anytime one of them has entered into the cardinal signs, they've come into relationship with the great shift planets and activated them, which is why this energy keeps going on throughout this year. You know, this energy in the great shift planets began back in February and March. So it definitely has everything to do with the pandemic and the energies, the way the pandemic has affected our world. And at the time that I'm recording this, we have an upsurge in cases, certainly in the United States. I know in Europe, in many places in the world, there's an upsurge in cases. And the pandemic is very much affecting all of us. It's simply not going away at this point. And that's part of that feeling of constraint and frustration that many people in the world are responding to. So with these two planets coming back into Libra, we're going to get some more of that Libran energy, and it's going to start pretty quickly because Mercury, when it retrogrades back into Libra, is going to turn direct in that square to Saturn. And that's going to come into effect for the first time on Saturday, the 31st. Mercury will do a square to Saturn retrograde, and it's going to stay in that place until about the 5th or the 6th. It's going to be in a challenging relationship, a square to Saturn. So if you just think about it, Mercury is communication, Saturn is restriction and constraint, and a square is a challenging relationship. You kind of get the idea of what that might mean for the world at large, and that feeling of difficulty in communication, restraints, limitations, all of those sorts of things in effect here throughout much of this week going on into next week. So that's the energy of that. We also have coming up this week, we have a full moon. That's going to take place on Saturday the 31st, Halloween. We have a Halloween full moon. That's powerful in and of itself. And this is going to be a particularly powerful full moon. First of all, because of that square between Mercury and Saturn, it's exact on for the first time on the 31st. So, we have that energy coming into place, on the 1st, on November 1st, on Sunday is exact for the first time, but it's going to be in square on the full moon. So we have that energy there. We have Mercury in a square to the great shift planets. We have it opposite to Eris, the goddess of strife and discord. That's what we call a T-square. T-square looks like that. If you look at a chart, you see a pattern. It's usually outlined in red. That's a challenging relationship between the elements that are involved in it. It's kind of like a four-legged table with a leg missing. And so a four-legged table or four-cornered table that has three legs, it can stand, but it's unstable. So that's the energy of a T-square. So we keep having these T-squares all this year, which is part of the reason why it's been such a challenging year. And so that energy is going to be very much there for the full moon. We're also going to have an opposition between Chiron, the wounded healer. This is Anubis in the Egyptian pantheon, in an opposition to Venus. And an opposition means that the elements involved are on either side of the earth, and the earth is kind of caught in between. We're caught in between. In this case, between Venus, the principle of values, what we want to receive. It's Isis in the Egyptian pantheon, opposite to Chiron, the wounded healer, Anubis. Certainly opportunities for healing around the receptivity, the yin energy on our planet. We can think of it as yin, receptive, feminine, whatever word suits you. But it's what we want to take in, what we want to receive. That's why Venus is about values. And Venus in Libra wants to receive harmony. And there's some wounding, some difficulties around that. That's going to be present in the full moon. And most importantly is the actual energy of the full moon itself. Of course, the sun is in Scorpio. The moon will be in Taurus. Again, it's an opposition. When we have a full moon, we've got the sun on one side of us, we've got the moon on the other side, and we're in the middle. Earth is in the middle, which is why the full moons are always energetically intense. The moon represents our emotions, our feelings. It's the unconscious. It's the first 7 years of life, and it's also our time in the womb. So that's a lot of precognitive time. It's instinctive, it's visceral, it's somatic. That's the energy of the full moon. It's emotional. The sun is our ego identity. It's our personality structure as we understand it. So when we have these elements on either side, and we, the earth, and all of the beings on the earth are in the middle, there's an upsurge in energy. The tides are higher during the full moon. The blood moves more quickly. I remember many years ago, I had a veterinarian tell me, my veterinarian that's in San Francisco, who I worked with for many, many years, Dr. Lee Morris, a wonderful man. He told me that he didn't like to schedule surgeries during the full moon because there was more blood. The blood was flowing more fully. And so he preferred to wait a couple of days after the full moon or do it a few days before the full moon, just to avoid complications of that additional blood flow. So we have that gravitational pull of the moon that's affecting us during a full moon. So it's more intense. And this one's going to be particularly intense because the moon will be in a conjunction and alignment with Uranus. Uranus is one of the three outer planets. We have Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. We've got Eris out beyond that, and Ceres. But in terms of the major planets of our solar system, we've got Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. These three are often in astrology called the generational or the evolutionary planets. They refer to the times that we're born into. And they're come into most prominence, first of all, if they're changing direction, but also if they come into relationships with the inner planets. And the inner planets are the planets primarily Sun through Jupiter in this case. So when they come into relationship with them, they make a tremendous impact both in our individual charts. You know, if you have Uranus or Neptune or Pluto prominent in your chart, you carry an overlay in your personality of that particular planetary energy. You know, it's an important planetary energy for you. It has a lot to do with your growth and your transformation, the changes that you go through during the process of your life. When they come into relationship with us by transit, this is when major things happen in our life. And when they come into relationship on a planetary level, things happen on the planet. So during this particular full moon on Halloween, we have Uranus and the moon conjunct, and therefore in opposition to the sun. That's an intense full moon. Now, again, remember the moon is the unconscious. Uranus is the shatterer, is the great awakener. It's Wadjet in the Egyptian pantheon. She's the Kundalini goddess. She's the cobra. This is about eruptions that come from the unconscious. Uranus rules earthquakes. It rules volcanoes, volcanic eruptions that come from the unconscious, from the subconscious into consciousness. That will be happening during this time. It's going to be a prime time to go out and howl at the moon and really activate that Wadjet energy within you, you know, that primal kind of energy. And for the planet as a whole, particularly with Mercury slowing to station in that square to Saturn, you know, Mercury's Thoth, Saturn is Sobek, communication, constraint, it's going to be intense for a lot of people. So howl at the moon, but be aware that this is an intense time. This is an intense full moon. So I want to acknowledge that this is the Taurus full moon, and in Shamanic Egyptian Astrology, Taurus is allied with Hathor. And Hathor is probably the primal earth goddess. She's one of the most ancient of the Egyptian netters. She goes way, way back into prehistory, and you find her in the earliest myths of Egypt. And what she is about is she teaches us, or her message to us is that on this planet, in this dimension, enlightenment is not attained by escaping our bodies and going out into the universe. And I'm not saying that's not a valuable thing to do and not something that we want to do from time to time, but all of that energy needs to be brought back into form. Taurus is about form. Taurus is about grounding in the earth. And so Hathor's message is about taking that information and bringing it down into the earth. You know, Hathor is a very lush earth goddess. In the northern hemisphere, she is about springtime. You know, her season is May, and she's about the bursting out of flowers, of new life being born, of things growing, the plants growing really quickly. And in the southern hemisphere, that time of year is about harvest and about the vegetables and the fruits of the plants coming into fruition, coming into their full body and being ready to be eaten and taken into our bodies. So it's about the nourishment that comes from the earth. This is Hathor. You know, she's all about coming on down, you know, being in our bodies, enjoying both the pleasure and the pain of being in form. This is the original message of the earth goddess, the earth mother, that she's telling us is that it's safe to be in form. We come from form. We come from a body, our mother's body, and we come into form through that transition. And this is where we learn our lessons of earth life, is in form. Now, the journey that I want to offer this year, this time, is not with Hathor, although it could be. I spent some time going back and forth trying to decide who I wanted to offer up as a journey for all of us. But I've decided that we're going to go with the goddess that I consider to be in many ways her descendant. And that is the goddess Isis, who is associated and allied with Venus. And I had to kind of meditate on this because, I wasn't sure. Hathor, Isis. In many ways, I see them as two aspects, very similar aspects of the same energy. They are both mother goddesses. Hathor is that ultimate earth mother. Isis is the queen mother of heaven. She is in the history of Egypt. She came into prominence later in Egypt's history, and she shows up in more myths that are familiar to Westerners. She's a part of the basic kind of the primary myth that comes out of Egypt, which is the story around the murder of Osiris by his brother Set. And she is Osiris's consort. She plays a seminal role in that myth because she brings Osiris back to life after he is murdered. She collects the pieces of his body. He's been dismembered by Set. She remembers him. And it is out of that faithfulness that she has to him, that great love that she has for him, the great grief that she experiences from losing him, that a new life is born, and that new life is Horus, the young king. So she's very prominent in the mystery of Osiris, which is the mystery of the birth, death, rebirth cycle, which is eternal on earth. We see this everywhere we look. Things die, something new is born out of death, it comes to term and it dies, and then on we go. Something new is born out of death. She's very important in that myth. And the reason I ultimately decided that I'd like to offer a journey with her today is because I've used her throughout the time I've been doing these videos. I've always ended with her. She's been an ally of ours. She's come forth at the end of all of our journeys to hold us in her arms, in her wings. She wraps her wings around us. And what's important to know about Isis, in her role as Queen Mother of Heaven, she is present for us through every process of transformation and change. And as I said earlier, she is to me like a descendant. She comes later in Egypt's history. So she's like the granddaughter of Hathor. And while Hathor is that earth mother, as we move through history, there's a bit of fragmentation that starts to happen with all of the gods and goddesses. We get more of them as we move through history. And, more and more gods and goddesses in various cultures are sort of, they're taking over different aspects of different sort of territories. It's sort of like a fragmentation, and they're all kind of asserting their dominance over particular territories of life. And so she's part of that fragmentation process. Hathor, to me, splits into two goddesses, which is Nephthys, who is the keeper of the mysteries behind the veils, sometimes called the veiled Isis, and Isis. While Nephthys is a lunar goddess, Isis is a solar goddess, and they're twins. So there's two aspects of them right there. And we can see that, particularly when we think about the sign Libra, which is about the scales. It's about the balancing of the opposites. And Isis is very much, she is in opposition to her sister Nephthys, who's the lunar goddess. She's the solar goddess. Bunch of reasons there, but for that reason, I've decided that today I would like to offer a journey with Isis, Queen Mother of Heaven, consort of Osiris, the great goddess of Egypt, and a very important goddess in our modern day. Even after Egypt was invaded by Greece, which happened in the 6th century BC, and then was invaded by Rome, which happened around the 1st century CE. She remained prominent, and her influence spread to Rome, and there were cults of Isis, there were temples to Isis in what became Italy, all the way up to the fall of Rome. And at that point, the cults of Isis went underground. They never completely disappeared. And I'm sure many of you have a personal relationship with Isis. She's prominent in many of our psyches. And so let's close our eyes and take a couple of nice deep breaths. Exhale fully. We can't get air in if we don't push it out. And I wish to call in the great goddess Isis. And I invite you to imagine that you are entering her temple. There were temples to Isis built throughout the ancient world. If you have been fortunate enough to visit Egypt, as I have been, you may have visited one of the most magnificent temples in Egypt, which is the temple of Isis on the island of Philae. It's a beautiful temple. In Egypt today, it was moved. And when they built the Aswan Dam, they painstakingly, brick by brick, took apart the temple of Isis and they rebuilt it on higher ground. So it's not where it was throughout history. But there was a benefit that came from that rebuilding, that reassembling. It's kind of ironic. Isis remembered Osiris. She reassembled his body. And her temple in Egypt was very carefully reassembled by the people of Egypt, Egyptologists and archaeologists and workers who carefully and painstakingly put this temple back together on higher ground, brought it to safety. It would have been inundated by the waters, and they brought it to safety. Isis found Osiris's, the pieces of his body, along the banks of the Nile. And she and her sister Nephthys brought them to safety. So there's a kind of synchronicity in this. And that temple has been reassembled in a beautiful way. And it holds the energy of Isis. It's a nurturing, beautiful place. So whether you travel to the temple of Isis in Egypt, or a temple to Isis in another place, or perhaps simply the temple of Isis in your mind, know that this is a place of great power. This is the temple to the divine feminine. This is where she is in her strength, in her power, in her glory, in her beauty. Her essence permeates every inch of this place. All of the carvings on the walls, all the paintings on the walls, all of the nooks and crannies of the temple itself is infused with her powerful energy. And as you wander this temple, you find that you are drawn to a particular room that is the Holy of Holies. It is the heart of the temple. It is the place where her altar is set. the place where her energy is strongest, the place where she most resides. And I invite you to stand at the entryway and to ask permission to enter. We cannot enter the Holy of Holies without permission from the Goddess. And when it is given, enter this room and enter the energy, the emanation of this amazing goddess, she with the rainbow wings. And as you do, you feel yourself walking right into her embrace. She wraps her rainbow wings around you. And you remember that she is always there. She is with us through every process of transformation and change that we go through. And I'm going to be quiet now for a few minutes and let you journey with this magnificent goddess, Isis. She of the rainbow wings, Queen of Heaven. She has information for you about your process of transformation. So rest against her bosom. Feel those wings wrapped around you. Nice deep breath. Travel with Isis. Journey with her into the story of your own process of change. The energy that Isis holds is the energy of love. She is Venus, the planet Venus, which is values, that which we most want to receive. Bottom line, we all want to receive love. When we are held in the loving wings of Isis, we are loved. Imagine now that those beautiful wings grow longer and wider, and held within them now, joining you, are all those you love. Family members, children, parents, spouse, partners, friends, your companion animals, nature, your home, your community. The wings stretch out further. Your country, all the people of your country. And the wings grow very large now. And imagine that our entire planet, our beautiful Gaia, is held in the loving arms, the rainbow wings of Isis. And you are part of this. As you allow yourself to be held by her, you breathe in that love she holds. And you emanate it out to those that are close to you, out to those you don't know, out further and further, until our entire planet, beautiful Gaia, is held in the loving wings of Isis. Nice deep breath. Feel what that's like to live on a planet that is held and protected by this beautiful goddess of love. Nice deep breath. Giving thanks to this beautiful being, Isis, Queen Mother of Heaven. And I invite each of you to make a commitment to call her in every day, to feel yourself held in her loving wings, and to become an emissary to make a commitment to the best of your ability. We're all human, but to the best of your ability, you are going to emanate her beautiful love out into the world as best you can. That when you are wrapped in her wings, you are infused with her love. And that love can flow from you to our entire planet. We need healing. We need love. We need hope. Take a nice deep breath. Come slowly back into the room. Thank you. We will talk again.